Welcome to the Give for Grouse podcast, dedicated to giving the ruffed grouse a voice by promoting sound wildlife management, advocating for forest health, and championing all things conservation. Now let's get to the show with Cody Altizer and Eric Long. Well, as the intro clearly states, welcome to the Give for Grouse podcast. I am one of your hosts, Eric Long. The other gentleman, brother from another mother, Cody Altizer.
What's going on?
I'm trying not to die. I'm just trying to say something.
Off to a rough start.
I know. We should start it all over. No, man. What's going on, brother?
Oh, April's cruising by. Breaks my heart.
Oh, my gosh. It is flying. It is absolutely flying. Yeah, man. We're running out of hot grouse blind filming days.
Right? Makes me sad. There's still plenty of time left, but we were talking about it earlier, and it is the equivalent of hunting the whitetail rut in November for me. This is what it's become, and it's all I want to do. It's so much fun. I get so excited. I went out this morning and got some clips, nothing fantastic, but I came home there are times like I almost can't sleep the night before because I'm so excited because you never know what's going to happen. You don't know what you're going to see.
Well, this year, like years past, I was rocking and rolling. My grouse was like, he was waiting for me. Mm-hmm. Like, where you at? This year, I can't. It's been tough. He's been there. It's just trying to figure out the log. And it's been so frustrating. And you're sitting there rocking and rolling, grabbing some great footage that we can't wait to share with everybody. And it's frustrating. I know when I pulled out of the driveway this late morning, I was thinking to myself, like, I got to get my stuff together because we're running out of time. I only got a good 2 weeks. And, I just can't take off work all the time just to do this damn thing. God, that's damn grouse. He's killing me, Cody. He's killing me.
Trust me, I know. I've been there many, many times. And I've been lucky. I've gotten some good clips, but the clips that I've gotten, it's a time investment.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been skunked plenty of mornings. I've been filming two different birds. The second one I've been filming, I've seen him every time. I've gotten footage of him every time, but he hasn't done what I've wanted him to do. So even still, I'm trying to figure it out and get a step ahead. Like I said, I want us to do a whole separate episode, so we'll save all the good stuff. I just think it's so much fun filming these things, chasing them around. We'll go into more detail in a later episode that I'm very excited about, but it's
the grind.
It's so much fun because you never know. You got a good idea. They're going to be there. You know what I mean? Like in the area, maybe not necessarily right in front of you, but they're going to be there. You're going to always be in the game, and it's just this waiting game. Are the stars going to align, and they're going to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it? And it's this cat and mouse. It's this treasure hunt, and you get to chase them around one morning, and if you're lucky, and do it again the next day or that afternoon, and it's just a blast. But it is sad that we're running out of time.
It is. If you, that's why it's like when you see a picture of a grouse or a video of a grouse, man, you don't appreciate what the X, Y, and Z to get that. Oh my gosh, I took it for granted, and I'm paying the dues for this year. But with that being said, before I have it's homework time, but at this after homework time, I have a question to ask you before we have our guest on. So
sure.
All right. So homework time. Go ahead, Mr. Altizer.
I'll make it quick. We should start our old deer hunter podcasts with.
That's what y'all know. I thought about that.
I'm excited. Homework item number 1 is our billboard campaign. I have not shared this news with you. Our new one is about to go up next month.
Really? Where are we at with that? How much more money?
We don't have a design for it yet, so it's Clock's ticking
Oh,
on
I
that.
thought,
So we got to figure that out.
oh,
But
call in with your details.
yeah, exactly.
Call with your
Ring in with
ideas.
an idea. I think we're about $1,200 more to our fundraising goal.
Come on, somebody, come
We
on.
mentioned it on the last podcast. It's deceiving because it's again 2 6-month runs. We're raising 10 grand for a
Yeah,
year's long contract. So basically, and we're putting up 2 billboards. So basically, the first billboard cost 5,000. Second billboard
yeah,
cost 5,000. We're 6 months in, and are basically 90% of the way to our fundraising goal. So we're ahead of schedule. The first billboard is funded and
yeah,
paid for. We just
yeah,
need 1,000, 1,200 ish more dollars to pay for the second
yeah.
one. We're way ahead of schedule. Just help us get there
Let's
so we
just
can put
finish
a
this
big
baby off.
stamp red funded
Let's kill it.
right
Let's just
on it.
kill it. Come on.
HabitatVA.org. Send us all your money. It's after
Yeah.
tax season. You probably got a rebate.
Oh,
Unless you're like me
easily.
and
I mean,
self-employed and have to give your money to Uncle Sam, but
yeah, bastard.
give us all your money. Give us your tax rebate.
Yeah, what a great thing to do for
Just kidding.
wildlife.
Be more. That's bad financial advice.
Yeah, that's
But if you got
right.
some pennies to spare, we'll take them.
Right. Yeah, $4 or $5 gallon of gas. Pff, that's nothing. Come on.
Yes, exactly.
Take a donate to a billboard.
Homework item
Anyway,
number 2, so we can get to this
2.
exciting question. 5-star review, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That's all you got to do. Send us a review. Screenshot it. Send us your address. Chippendale,
Yes.
Ruffed Grouse and a chainsaw,
Oh, yeah.
or bobwhite quail in the drip torch.
Where do you want me? Where do you want
It's
me to
almost
sit?
quail whistling season, I imagine. Maybe down south.
Oh,
They're
easily.
starting to whistle.
Yeah, I'm getting. No. Maybe probably another month, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably another month.
coming up on it.
God, someone's going to go, no,
Oh, yeah. I heard
you're
one
an
yesterday.
idiot. You're
I
so
can't
cynical
wait.
all the
I
time.
don't think I'll hear any quail back home, but man, that's a sweet sound.
Oh, yeah. But with that said and done, shirts. Remind everybody of the shirts,
Oh,
Mr.
yeah, we
Alt.
have some t-shirts for sale. Same
Yeah,
design, rough grouse and a chainsaw
yeah,
on a gray t-shirt. T-shirts are
yeah.
$25, hoodies are $30.
And
If you're ordering
shirts,
a hoodie,
same
t-shirts are
size for
true
the
to size.
shirts. Yep.
Hoodies order a size up.
Hoodies. Yep. Up. So I have my shirt on right now. Love
That's
it.
what it is.
It's just the right weight. It's perfect, especially this time of year, getting in a grouse blind. So if you've got a grouse, you got a blind, pick up a shirt.
Bring you
So
some luck.
anyway, question. We used to start this off with the Deer Hunter podcast. That was fun.
Mm.
Then we ran out of questions.
Yeah.
Then we would argue and go, I think it's your turn. No, it's not. No, it's your turn. Anyway, you have to know what I'm about to ask you.
I truly don't. I don't have a clue.
Oh my, come on. All right. So it's that time of year. There are 2 things going on bird-wise in the natural world. Some people go completely apes over one. Big conventions about this bird. Like 80,000 people show up to this
Hmm.
convention in Nashville. And a lot of money is raised for it. Okay. A lot of money goes into conservation over this bird. There's research projects. And then there's this other bird that, in many ways, is noted and is also given a name King of Spring. So, the question that I'd like to ask you, Mr. Altizer, who is the true King of Spring? Is it the wild turkey or is it the ruffed grouse? What says you?
Wild Tom Turkey or old Ruff the Ruff Grouse? It is no
Yes, who
question.
is the true King of Spring?
The Ruffed Grouse. No question.
Oh, there's many people right now going, oh, you had me
Good.
until you said that.
Good. I will debate you until we are both blue in the
Oh
face.
my God. Think about both. Let's quickly analyze that, and then we'll bring on our guests.
Oh,
So, like I said, one of them.
don't get
That,
me
we got
started.
to debate it. We got to debate it. So, one of them, yes, it raises a lot of money for conservation. It is, hey, Ben Franklin wanted it to be the national symbol or national bird. All right. Although Leopold says differently. But one, yeah, a lot of research going on it. People go apes. They hear that thunder in the morning, oh, drive you nuts. But then one represents forest ecology. One represents the true ecology, biology, etc. The whole biota
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem. So which one is more important? A representation of how our forest or woodlands is, or one that just gets people excited because they hear a gobble?
No
I
question.
think you lean in, you pick up where I'm putting
Ruffed grouse, 100%, no question.
down. Really?
It's kind of, I mentioned it in a couple of our episodes. If you're managing for grouse specifically,
Yes.
you're making management decisions for grouse. And again, there's no guarantee if they come or if they
Yeah.
respond. It is selfless work, and it is, in my opinion, the most true definition of wildlife management, forest management. It is the essence of stewardship because you are making a decision today, kind of on a hope and a prayer, but based off of science and management and what we know how a forest will respond to fire or a timber harvest or whatever that type of management may be. There's no microwave success. There's no instant gratification. You're going to have to wait. You're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to trust the process. You're going to have to trust the science. You're going to have to let nature do its thing. And if you do it well and you do it responsibly, and it sounds kind of cheesy to say, but I do believe this is part of it. If you do it with good intentions, then over time, I think you'll have grouse and grouse will respond, but there's no guarantee. And even still, you're not going to see grouse every day. You're not going to hear them every day. So you're making a decision for the betterment of a species that you're rarely going to see, rarely going to hear, and you're doing it really for the betterment of an entire forest and an entire ecosystem. And a turkey, like I said, we could run a fire through a woodland or an old field. There'll be turkeys in it the next day. You can gobble at turkey. I got national forest 300 yards out, and I live in town. At the end of my neighborhood, I can go out and make some Cody made turkey yelps, and I could get one calling back at me.
Yeah.
Can't do that with the ruffed grouse.
No. So the big debate, and we'll press forward here, but the big debate is a gobble versus thunderous wing flaps. You have a bird that's really big, gobbling on a limb. Is he exposed? Yeah. But, you have this vulnerable little chicken-sized bird jumps up on a log, risk life and limb for the ladies. Turkeys, do they do that? No, they do not. No, they do not. And that leads us to our guest, Karl Malcolm.
You done got me fired up.
That leads us to our guest
podcast.
So that leads us to our guest, a gentleman from Ruffed Grouse Society, RGS. Would you like to let everybody know about
Karl Malcolm? He is the Vice President of Conservation, I believe is his title for the Ruffed Grouse Society. I didn't know much about Karl, still don't, candidly. He was on Steven Ranella's podcast too, in the Meat Eater. Yeah. So if you're not familiar, in the top podcasts in the outdoor world, Meat Eater's like 4 or 5 below us, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, it's like
they're trying. If
you know what, it's like Joe Rogan, Get for Grouse, Ranella, right?
No, Karl was on the Meat Eater podcast about a month ago, and again, didn't know much about Karl, if anything at all. But the episode was about grouse management, forest management, a little bit of woodcock. And it's funny, you and I talk about it. We have our podcast, which I enjoy doing, but I'm not a podcast listener. I don't. Mm-hmm. It's just not my thing. But that one I wanted to listen to, and it was a long one, 2.5 hours or something.
Mm-hmm.
Could have doubled it, and I'd have listened to the whole thing. Loved it so much, I listened to it twice, and that was mainly because of Karl. Honestly, I mean, it was a lot. Yeah. Learned a lot about grouse, about forest management, but what I took away the most from that episode was Karl's ability to communicate. And it's funny that we're having Karl on now because our last episode you and I did together, we talked about good communicators and how important that is. And Karl fits that bill. It's rare to find somebody who can so eloquently and clearly communicate knowledge and information that they're passionate about or not, or that they know. And I'm glad that we got Karl on our own to see how he does.
Right. Yeah, we'll put him to the test. Ranella.
We'll show you, Steve.
I mean, jeez. You're not officially a big good podcast until you have the All Ties Are Long show on your show. So just let's ease up, okay? Let's ease up. Anyway, all right, let's bring this gentleman on. Looking forward to this conversation for sure.
Mr. Karl Malcolm, how are you doing this afternoon, sir?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here with you guys.
Appreciate you coming on. I'm very excited. Mentioned it to you briefly before we hit record. Candidly, didn't know much about you until you were on the Meat Eater podcast. And that came out, whenever it was, about a month or so ago. Listened to it out of curiosity, just to learn more about grouse and its habitat. Listened to it, loved it. Listened to it the second time. And
oh man.
Yeah,
that's
truthfully.
Awesome.
And honestly, that was less about the content, but more how you communicated it and taught about it. Eric and I talk about it a lot. There's a finite amount of information out there about all this stuff. The key, or what separates one from another, is the ability to communicate and teach. And that was my biggest takeaway from your podcast on Meat Eater, was how clearly you were able to communicate a lot of this information. So that's what I'm hoping, not to set the expectation higher, put the pressure on, but I'm hoping that's what we can deliver on our podcast as well.
Don't screw this up, Karl.
Pressure's on, man. Pressure's on. Well, that's good. I appreciate the feedback. I think a lot about communication and science, and some of the folks that I admire most were scientists who were able to communicate effectively with different audiences. And I think there's a lot to be said for storytelling and first person experience. And it's easy when we're talking about forest wildlife and grouse and woodcock, because it's been part of my life, and I'm sure part of your lives, for a long time. So it's very familiar ground. It's a lot of fun to have a chance to dig into topics that I care about so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get into all the good stuff, for everybody who is listening, just give everybody a rundown: who you are, where you come from, what you do. All that I know,
sure.
And I don't want to steal your thunder, is I know Forest Service, and I think VP of Conservation for RGS. But
that's right. Yep. So current role, Vice President of Conservation for the Ruffed Grouse Society and American Woodcock Society. I've been in this position for coming up on 9 months now, so relatively new in the role after spending about 15 years working in federal government. Had a number of different positions with the United States Forest Service, working out west, working in New Mexico and Arizona, spent some time in Colorado, some time in Washington, D.C., and then my most recent position with the Forest Service was as an assistant regional director for renewable resources for the eastern region. So that's kind of like the northeast 20 states of the U.S. And the portfolio that our team was responsible for included all the coolest stuff, like fisheries, wildlife, botany, ecology, soil science. The list goes on from there. We had a great team of folks doing some really cool work on the National Forest System. And I think that experience prepared me really well for a position with RGS and AWS, because in a lot of ways the mission is the same. We're trying to take really good care of the forest, trying to find ways to partner, leverage precious funding to get good things done on the ground for wildlife and for people, for all of us who love forests and wildlife. So it was a really smooth transition, and also it's been a lot of fun just getting a really in-depth exposure to a scrappy, innovative, visionary nonprofit. We have about 50 employees as an organization, and then this community of volunteers and members and supporters who make the work possible. But it's a lot of fun being part of an organization after spending a lot of time in federal service, where there is a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of process. There is red tape that you've got to get good at navigating. and coming into an organization that is just very nimble and scrappy has been really refreshing, and getting to see how these partnerships between a public agency and a nonprofit look from the other side. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and we can dig more into what the team's doing, but suffice it to say, just off the top, I mentioned this 50-person team. We have world-class professionals, foresters, ecologists, people who really understand what it takes to deliver conservation on the ground, and we're able to get a lot of good things done with the resources that we have and use those really effectively. So it's been a great transition, and I'm really excited about some of the things that we have on the horizon that I'm sure we'll have a chance to dig into together today.
Right on.
Excellent. Well, I had a pretty relaxed question to start this thing going, but after hearing that, I don't know if I should start yapping out of the gate. I don't
Bring
know.
it on, man. Bring it on.
Darn it. It's like you just threw me all off. Yeah. No, I mean, God, I have like a gazillion questions just based on all that, especially the Forest Service aspect of it. But no, we kind of started off before we pushed record about stupid grouse. Cody and I have been trying to film. He's in Virginia, I'm in Ohio, and we got grouse on drumming logs and what have you. And it's just a complete pain in the butt trying to get these things on film. I got up this morning at 4:00, drove an hour, get set up, got almost lost going to the blind that I've been to like 3 times. And you set up, and Cody always says it's the best. When you pick the wrong log, every 3 to 5 minutes, you're reminded that you're an idiot, that you did the wrong log. And it's like the grouse that I have has like 3 logs, and 3 or 4 logs actually. And I'm set up on this great one. It's going to be awesome footage. And then he started off at the log that I moved from. It's like I said, every 3 to 5 minutes when he drums, you're like, yep, I'm an idiot. Why did I move? But the drumming aspect of things, I'm really not I know grouse management, but I'm not, a professor by any stretch at it. I just always pretend that I don't know anything. But when it comes to this stuff, because I want to learn so much, like the drumming aspect of that, what do you know about the drumming? I know it's a broad question. I don't know if you know the answer or not, but like the drumming thing is just so intriguing. Like I had a grouse that you could set your watch to it. He went to the same log, sat there, drum, preened. It was boring. And now this grouse, he's got, it's definitely a different one. He's bouncing all over. It's like, is that a young grouse? What the hell is he doing? He's never on a routine. He can't set your watch to it. And Cody's got the same thing. This grouse, I'll let Cody explain it, but he's got a grouse that does starts off early at this thing, and then he gets on this other log, and so you're playing cat and mouse, and it's just so frustrating. It's more frustrating than filming deer, more than turkeys. It's just these things, man. They're killing me. I am so tired right now. I can fall asleep. It's just so frustrating. But I rambled on enough. Like drumming, like I said, I don't know if there's a question in there, but like the drumming aspect of things, like what, it's just so intriguing.
It is. And, you made this comment about being a guy who sort of relies on this ploy of pretending like you know nothing. Right. But I would counter, like, what percentage of the human species alive today has done what you've done in the span of the last 16 hours, get up early, go out to a blind to try to see this, to try to observe. Yeah. And, stories like what you're sharing remind me of the reality that so much of the best education happens outside the classroom, right? Like we in our society, there's a lot of value, at least in some circles, placed on education, right? Like, what degrees do you have? What school did you go to? There's a certain segment where people pay attention to that. I am drawn to folks who, number one, just want to learn over the course of their lives, like have that appetite for knowledge. And then number two, people who just want to figure stuff out, right? So the fact that you are setting up a blind, playing this cat and mouse game, taking time out of a busy life to spend dawn in the woods trying to get footage of a grouse. And it sounds like, Cody, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty damn cool. And that's just a tiny fraction of people who have done that. The other thing, as I'm talking through this, that I'm thinking about this time of year is the woodcock spring mating display, right? The sky dance that's going on, and the amount of attention that's drawn this year in particular, it seems like. But the idea of people sort of disconnecting from all the other distractions and just going out to observe nature up close and personal. So that's awesome. And it also belies a reality that you probably know a hell of a lot more about this topic than your average Joe on the street. But to cut to the chase, a few things I'd highlight. One, like in the bird world, but also we could talk about mammal examples of this as well. When it comes to breeding strategies, what is often the case, and it applies a little bit to people too, but what is often the case is this idea that males tend to be either very successful or they fail when it comes to reproduction. And what separates the males that are super successful from those that fail oftentimes is the ability to demonstrate their fitness really well.
Mm-hmm.
And that boils down in the bird world. And also we could talk about some other examples from outside of the bird world, but in the bird world, that often boils down to being really flashy. Like if you think about ducks are a good example, it's usually the males and neotropical migrant birds, et cetera. Of course, grouse, it's hard to differentiate a male from a female other than behaviorally. But oftentimes what you'll see is either through behavior or through physical appearance, males are taking risks to demonstrate just how badass they are, how fit they are.
Yeah.
They're bright, they're flashy, they're showing off, and they're also subjecting themselves to risky endeavors. So if we think about it from the standpoint of like prairie grouse species, I'm thinking about sharptails right now, out displaying in their leks, dancing, making noise, showing off. They are at higher risk of predation.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's an energetic cost too, right? They're showing, I have been doing so well as an individual. I am so fit that I have calories to spare, where if you're a sharptail, you're out dancing. And if you're a roughie, think about how much energy it takes to move those wings with no real purpose other than just showing off, right? So yes, they're attracting females. They're drawing females in with that noise. But the reason that that's alluring is you've got a male who is cagey enough and fit enough, despite being like a little butterball snack nugget in the forest that everything wants to eat. It's willing to get up on a log, keep its butt on the ground, right? Like it's not flying off, it's sitting tight, and it's making all this noise that is also very energetically expensive. So all those things, and sometimes they do get picked off, right? So that's like the ultimate loser from a reproduction standpoint. But if they're able to do all those things, to show off, to burn all those extra calories, to withstand those costs, and then also be available for breeding opportunities, those are very attractive suitors for the hens that are out sneaking around, not making a lot of noise, hiding out, laying low. Which brings to mind the fact that hens also will engage in risky behavior around reproduction. So I don't know if either of you guys have ever seen, like if you get too close to a hen ruffed grouse that has a lot of like a clutch of chicks, they'll feign injury. They'll do like broken wing deal. They'll make a lot of
kill your type of thing,
try to pull your attention away. So in both sexes, a willingness to take risk in pursuit of reproductive success is evident. But when it comes to the disproportionate sort of winners and losers, a really successful male is going to fertilize multiple females. Females are going to be biologically limited to how many eggs they can produce. But that deal with just like showing off, check out how badass I am. And then maybe just thinking about it quickly from the standpoint of a couple other species. So in the human realm, it's very easy to come up with examples of people demonstrating how they have a disproportionate level of access to resources, right? This would be like the guy with the Maserati showing off. Like, it's not buying the car because the car is super sweet. Buying the car because you're able to demonstrate that you have the resources to be able to afford something that's very expensive. So there's kind of an analog there. And then if you look at it from the standpoint, we could go with like Rocky Mountain elk, for an example, from the mammal world, where the energy that it takes and the effort and the exposure that it takes to be a dominant bull that's protecting a harem from all the other bulls and also exposing yourself to a lot of risk. There's a high risk, high reward dynamic in that example too. So at the core of it, it's this struggle to try to pass on genes to the next generation. The byproduct is if we're lucky and we pick the right log on the right day, we end up with a front row seat to a beautiful show.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why Cody, he hangs out with me because I make him look a lot better, especially this old man, old man gut. I'm like, leave me be. He's out there strutting around. But no, it's everything you said there was great. I had to smile because I know what Cody was thinking too. It's just, it's we talk about all the time how fortunate we have the footage that we have. And we did take it for granted. This bird in Ohio, I mean, like I said, you could set your watch to it. And I got so much. It got to the point where it's like, okay, why am I going out? I mean, it's just so much. And there was Cody that was, when he was first filming in Virginia at his home farm, he was playing cat and mouse. And I was like, dude, this is easy. Like, what are you doing? It was making fun of him, joking around. Now he's just like goes out, trips over him. I'm sitting there going, I'm ready to throw my camera. Yeah, it's it is. We're very spoiled, but appreciative at the same, because we talk about it every single time we talk about it. We always remind ourselves like how fortunate we are to have grouse, to be able to go to film and try to educate people from the footage and storytelling and stuff like that. So I'm glad you brought that up. But switching gears, and I'll let Cody get it after this. Totally switching gears. You mentioned the Forest Service and what is going on in today. And I don't know, like, how is this going to affect RGS with the Forest Service scaling down? I mean, I have my opinion on what's going on with the Forest Service. Everything kind of tends to get too big, and it does need readjusted. But at the same time, at what cost, and how are you readjusting everything is the key thing, because I'm sure there was government waste. There was a lot of room to adjust, but is it the right thing? Are you taking those right processes and steps to make it more functional and stuff like that? Especially like with the wildland firefighting thing and joining that. I think that was a pretty good idea, outside looking at least. But how's that going to affect RGS and the partnerships and stuff and projects that you're dealing with?
Yeah, well, I think a couple things that are super relevant right now. Just recognizing it's a time of a lot of change for not just the Forest Service, but other USDA agencies. We've got partnerships with the Natural Resource Conservation Service as well. Some private land work happening there. And anytime an organization undergoes a significant reorganization, there's going to be disruptions to the sorts of services that they provide. Another data point for folks to bear in mind right now, there is a hiring freeze agency-wide for the Forest Service, so they're not filling any new positions right now. And I think in general, there's a desire from the current administration to sort of reduce the proportion of mission delivery that's being handled by the federal government. And so I say that because if you look at some of the recent agreements that have been signed, there have been some shared stewardship agreements with states where the states are playing an increased role in helping sort of guide and implement management on federal lands. And I think in an environment like that, any organization, any federal agency, or a state agency, if they're facing similar constraints, is going to need help, going to need support. And we have a great history of partnering with the Forest Service. When I came into this role, we had a number of agreements in place with many different national forests where we're doing a lot of good work that really boils down to helping the Forest Service implement its own mission, which really aligns nicely with our mission, often involving active management, good silviculture, trying to maintain the forest products industry, focusing on wildlife habitat outcomes. These are all things that matter to both an agency like the Forest Service and obviously to Ruffed Grouse Society and American Woodcock Society. And so I think in a situation like this, there is absolutely opportunity to build on those successes. And there's also disruption to navigate together. So I think where we are successful, we have really good relationships with staff and leaders at the local level, all the way up to DC. And we have a really strong network with Forest Service staff between our organization and theirs, and being able to communicate about what their needs are. And then I mentioned earlier the idea of coming into a nimble and scrappy nonprofit where within the bounds of the law, we can do just about anything. You know, we can add positions, we can create new types of positions. We can partner with all sorts of different organizations. We can leverage relationships with corporations in a way that the federal government can't. So that we have all these tools in the toolbox to help. And so I think when an agency is facing the kinds of constraints and changes that an organization like the Forest Service is seeing right now, it makes nonprofit collaborators all the more valuable to help navigate that. And, you know, I think beyond that, I would just say the agency and the mission of the agency is something I spent 15 years of my career working to try to achieve. I know the quality of people that organization has working for it, whether that's in the National Forest System branch, whether that's in research and development, whether that's in state, private, and tribal forestry, whether that's in the fire management program. It's an agency that is constituted with people who have given their careers to public service and conservation. Yeah. And so I have just a ton of respect and appreciation, a lot of friends working for that agency. And I hope on the back end of all the change that the ability to deliver that mission is robust. And I know it's something that, you know, the people of the United States, I think, generally have a huge amount of pride around our public land system. You know, the Forest Service alone, that's 193 million acres of National Forest System land that, you know, includes some of the best places to hunt and fish anywhere on planet Earth. So those are things that I know all of us hold really dear. And I'm glad that as a nation, I think a lot of folks want to see us invest in the capacity of an agency like that.
Yeah, because I know, you know, you see on social media and everybody was, you know, and rightfully so, you only know what you know. So you don't criticize somebody that's passionate about what was transpiring. A lot of Teddy Roosevelt quotes and stuff like that. Again, you only know what you know and stuff. And it's like, at the same time, sitting back, taking a breath, you know, and like you said, like you mentioned, is that there are some great quality people that won't allow and will fight. There's still some fighting people that will make sure that everything is going to not go awry, if you will. So, yeah. No, I'm glad you kind of cleared that up, because I know the Forest Service, they put out some social media stuff trying to explain to people like, hey, calm down. You know, this is just this is this. But those are the same people that cut stuff. So, you know, yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah.
I would just say, like, in general, it behooves all of us to pay attention and educate ourselves and read from different perspectives and not jump to conclusions, but also, you know, if there are issues that people care about, and I think in a space like this, conservation, wildlife, access to nature are things that I think it's a safe bet folks listening to this conversation care about. Investing time and trying to understand those issues with some depth, inform your opinions well around available information, is time very well spent. And I think, you know, the other piece is being engaged with elected officials. If there's something that you care about, letting your opinion be known and being actively engaged as a citizen, right? Like the idea of civic responsibilities to engage, and not just making noise and being angry and not doing anything to get involved on whatever issue, right? Whatever side of an issue you're on. So maybe 2 more cents there I'll throw into the mix.
Applies to a lot of things. Got a very important question for you, Karl.
Right.
I think we should start asking this question to everybody, especially this time of year, Eric. In your opinion, excuse me, Karl, who is the king of spring?
Oh,
wild turkey.
There we go.
Wild turkey
get
or
off
the
the
ruffed
serious
grouse?
stuff. Yes.
Am I limited to those 2 options?
Yes.
If you are allowed to throw in an alternate.
Oh my
into
God,
the ring.
we're allowing alternates now.
Let me think for a minute, man. Like the king of spring.
I am a passionate believer that the king of spring is the ruffed grouse. I would trade 10 goblin turkeys for 1 drumming grouse every day of the week and twice in the summer.
So we Cody and I go back and forth on this because I am a very blue-blooded, red-blooded, whatever turkey head colors of turkeys.
Mm-hmm.
It's to the point where I told this story to Cody the other day. I was best man in my toast. Now, granted, I was 23 years old and didn't know any better. I thought it was great, but at the time, I thought at the time it was great. But now I look at it, it was pretty horrible toast. I said, "Raise your glasses. Turkey hunting or women? No question. Where's my call?" That was my toast.
That was the toast.
That was the toast.
What date was this wedding? Was this like an April 20th wedding and you were...
No, it was my buddy and I were like diehard turkey hunters. And I thought it'd be funny. I don't know. No one laughed. So I just drank.
I think Eric Long might be the king of the spring, man.
Yeah. I like to throw an alternate in there right now, please. Eric.
I like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm not big on limiting options because I think so. Here's how I'll answer that question. Since you started with these 2 amazing species, both of which I absolutely love, I'm tempted to be like, king of spring skunk cabbage, man, or marsh marigold.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
No one talks enough about the skunk cabbage. I mean, let's have that discussion.
Did you know they create their own heat? Did you know that? Like
I know nothing about skunk cabbage.
They produce their own. They can burn their stored starches from their root system, and they actually warm the earth around them to the point where if you're out in the woods and you see like the emerging skunk cabbage, you'll get halos of melted snow around them because the skunk cabbage is pushing out. So you want to talk about being like the king of spring, man?
It's true.
There's something to say for skunk cabbage. But here's the thing about turkeys and roughies. I have really gotten into chasing gobblers in a few places where I also hunt ruffed grouse, like at more northern latitudes, let's say. And so oftentimes my like dawn listening service, when I'm hoping to find roosted gobblers, I'm hearing more grouse than gobbles. And it serves as a good little scouting mission too for fall bird report, right? Like being out there in the spring. And the other thing I love to do in the spring, I'm a big trout fisherman, man. And I'm oftentimes combining turkey hunting and trout fishing. And I just, like when I think about where I would want to have my remains spread when the time comes, it's somewhere where there's cold flowing water, drumming grouse, gobbling turkeys, hopefully some whippoorwills in the mix. Woodcock doing their sky dance. So the idea of trying to like narrow it down to one thing, it's like, what's your favorite word from your favorite book? It's like,
exactly.
It's not the right.
Cody, that question's stupid. Never ask it again.
I'm glad you said whippoorwills because the whippoorwill would be my honorable mention as the king of spring.
Yep, there you go, man. He might be the king of summer, though.
That's true. It's funny. I think whippoorwills, I can't imagine a summer night not hearing a whippoorwill. But when I go into the grouse blind this time of year to film grouse in the morning, I had one right above me this morning. And
did you really?
Yeah. I associated them more now with spring now that I've tried to film grouse. But I've always said when my time comes to spread my ashes on a drumming log during the spring and a buck scrape during the fall. And wherever I am after my time on earth is past, I'll be a happy man if that's the case. But
that sounds pretty good because you get pooped on by a grouse and peed on by a deer.
I never thought of it that way. That's true. That's pretty cool. I never thought of it that way. That's the truth, though.
That's called being close to some species you worship, man.
That's exactly.
And I'm not knocking that, dude. I like it. That's beautiful. That's poetry.
I do got a question for you, and hopefully this can kind of segue into some nitty gritty of grouse habitat biology, this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
it may be an impossible question. So, 2 springs ago, 24, I had 2 drummers on my property. They were doing all the grouse things. Loved every minute of it. That was kind of I've always had grouse on my property, but Eric and I talk about it. Until you sit close to grouse, especially a drummer during the spring, it's difficult to establish an emotional connection with them just by the nature of the species. Because if you're hunting them, it's a flush. They're in and out of your life in a matter of seconds, or you shoot it and it's in your hand, but it's lifeless. Grouse aren't like deer and turkeys where you can sit and observe them without knowing you're there, without them knowing you're there, and really take in everything that the species has to offer. I've always said observation is our greatest gift in the natural world. So two springs ago, that was the needle in the vein for me, and I just got hooked on the species and everything about them. 24, they did all the grouse things. In the fall of 24, winter and spring of 25. They existed. I know that they were there. I did not hear a single drum all spring last year. I had cameras on the drumming logs. They did not show up on the drumming log. I did not hear them drum. But I know that they were there, and I can't always tell the difference between a male and a female, but if I get close enough, the size of the fan is a pretty distinguishable factor for me. So going in to check the cameras, I would flush, I'd flush birds around the drumming log. Were they male, or was it a male or a hen? I'm not entirely sure, but I lead to believe that it was a male. But even in the event that it was not, it's like, okay, they got picked off. They're not here anymore. It's a hen. Come to find out, last May, same part of the property, I found a hen. I came up on a hen and it was 8 or 10 chicks. So she found love somewhere. All that to say, winter of 25, and we don't have great grouse habitat on our property. Where the grouse are is good habitat. It's just small. So my theory, and you let me know if I'm right or wrong, it would do wonders for my ego if you told me that I was right. So keep that in mind before you answer.
Well,
I wonder, it's not a theory, I wonder, is it's not great grouse habitat, food and cover is limited, and it was a very stressful winter. It was a lot of cold, and not so much snow, but a lot of ice. So I wonder, and Eric and I have talked about this ad nauseum, and I would love a biologist's point of view. I think it was in Gordon Gillian's book. I'm not sure if you've read that about ruffed grouse. He, in so many words, basically said that the winter sets the stage for the individual and the species throughout the year. The healthier a hen or a male comes out of winter going into the spring, it sets the stage for the rest of the year. So I wonder if they didn't come out of winter in such poor condition. And as you mentioned earlier, drumming for a male is such a huge energy expenditure that, for a species, the number one goal is to live to see another day. So I wonder if they didn't come out of winter so stressed. You would think, Eric and I talked about it, that the biological switch would flip. Testosterone, photoperiodism, whatever the case may be, they get to this time of year, you would think biology would tell them to hop on a log and drum. But I wonder if, they didn't come out of winter so stressed that drumming being such a huge energy expenditure, they're like, I'm going to pass on that this year. And, and I wouldn't believe that if I didn't find the hen and the chicks. And again, the hen and the chicks, she could have come from a mile out the mountain, who knows? But I wonder, if that was the case, if the winter was so stressful on them that influenced their breeding activity that spring.
Cody, you're right.
Yes. That's all I needed to hear.
How much you guys want to nerd out
question,
here?
Please.
How much do you guys want to nerd out on reproductive physiology?
Dude,
for like
all of it,
man.
all of it.
All right. So for you guys or any of your listeners who really want to go down and get deep on this one, in reproductive physiology, there's this very interesting connection between the brain, the body, and the gonads. All right. So check out the hypothalamic adrenal gonadal axis. Just Google HPG axis, and you can learn more about this. But it's particularly important for females. So I'll give you a cool example of we'll go with black bears for a moment. Species I've done some work with over the years. Black bears have this very handy feature called delayed implantation. So a female black bear will mate with the male black bear. The eggs will be fertilized, and you'll have these fertilized embryos just floating around in the female's uterus for an extended period of time, as opposed to in other species, including humans, where that fertilized egg, that embryo, implants very promptly in the wall of the uterus and starts growing without delay. All right. So there's this delayed implantation of the embryo into the uterine wall. And during that period that these bare embryos are just floating around in the uterus, one of the things that's happening is the brain and the reproductive system are checking in with the body, trying to understand what condition is that sow black bear in, so that it can make, this isn't really a decision, right? But the physiology of the individual animal will be dictated by body condition. So if you have a sow black bear that has been bred and has these fertilized embryos floating around in her uterus, and she's in really bad condition, she will not have any of those embryos implant. She will not become fully pregnant to where she's carrying cubs to term. And there's all sorts of different hormones at play here that communicate from the body to the brain, what kind of condition am I in, and then the brain communicating with the reproductive system to make those sorts of go, no-go decisions. So in females, it's super important because reproduction is so costly as a female, right? If you're that black bear, the idea of carrying the pregnancy to term and then lactation, which is super important for black bears and super expensive calorically, you can't go into that process in a compromised state and expect it to go well. If you think about it from a bird standpoint, how many eggs are you able to produce? Every one of those eggs, costs a tremendous number of calories, especially when you consider the size of the bird. And then if you think about it from a male standpoint, this hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis also affects the secretion of hormones like testosterone that dictate behavior. And so there's this very complicated but elegant dance that's happening with these different systems of the body. And so if you have a grouse that's had a terrible winter, a male grouse that's had a terrible winter, and snowpack is a big deal, right? Having a lot of snow is great because grouse can use that for thermal refuge. They can bury themselves in there and ride out the storm and be out of harm's way. Even in very cold temperatures, snow is a good thing. Mm. If you don't have that snow, you've got ice, you've got really crappy temperatures, you've got lots of stress trying to flee from predators because you're more exposed. You end up going into that spring season in a compromised state. Maybe you're semi-starved, right? It's not just like, am I in the mood or not? It's a matter of the body actually telling the other systems, so that the physical body condition communicating with the rest of the body, in other words, in this case, the reproductive system, that things aren't great right now, man. Like if you're super sick, if you're terminally ill, you're probably not thinking much about romance in that condition, right? Your body is not in a condition to be looking for love. Mm-hmm. And there's a physiological reality there, right? Not to go too far down like the human analog, but like declining libido is oftentimes an indicator of something else going on physically where you're not firing on all cylinders, right? It's like an indicator of health and wellness. So that's certainly true in birds. And for a grouse that's already got compromised body condition to then be putting itself, not just burning more calories, but also exposing itself to increased risk of predation. This all goes back to what I was describing earlier about showing off how fit you are. If you're not fit, man, you're not in the mode to be showing off. Mm-hmm. But if a breeding opportunity came along, or maybe you drum that one time and, oh my God, she showed up, right? And a breeding occurs, you got a successful, hatching event with these chicks that you saw. It could be that you missed like the handful of times that drummer was doing his thing. Or, it could be that there was an encounter that didn't involve drumming. But I like your theory. I like the idea that those rough winter conditions could have certainly impacted body condition, which could have certainly impacted behavior as mediated by these physiological feedback loops that exist, that are ancient, right? These are things that you can look at across different species and find these same kind of patterns of regulatory control between the brain, the body, and the gonads.
It makes sense. And everything, that story, it was all very anecdotal, but there's always a rhyme or a reason to everything that happens in the natural world. And again, she could have found love not on my property. So it makes sense in theory, but it's something else I wanted to pick your brain about, kind of speaking to the health of individuals. And it's something everybody who knows about ruffed grouse knows about West Nile. And I think you touched on it briefly in the podcast with Ranella. If you could, I got a lot of different questions about West Nile. So I'm going to kind of ramble for a minute so you can get your thoughts and take it as many different directions as you want to go. Number one is you hear a lot about elevation. The higher the elevation, the more likely or the less likely West Nile is going to be prevalent. Number one, are you aware of any cutoff in elevation in which below that you notice, decline, a decrease in populations or a decrease in the health of the individuals, and then above that, obviously it gets better. But on the podcast with Meat Eater, you kind of mentioned, how healthy individuals can maybe combat the effects of West Nile, and that kind of speaks to a healthy environment and healthy ecosystems and healthy habitat. So in picture perfect ruffed grouse habitat in an environment, you have healthy individuals. Are they more likely to combat a West Nile incident? Is there any truth at all to that? Using the grouse on my property as an example, if they are more stressed, even at a higher elevation, are they more likely to succumb to a West Nile incident? So like I said, on our podcast, I think you're episode 17, so we're still baby, but a lot of the people we've talked to, West Nile has come up a little bit. We know it's a factor. How big of a factor is it? If you can unpack that a little bit for us.
For sure. Happy to. And the first question you asked was this question about like a cutoff in terms of elevation. And the answer to that one is no. And here's why. It's not only elevation, it's this interplay between latitude and elevation. And so we're talking about really like microsite, microclimate variability. And so with West Nile, we're dealing with a disease that has a vector, which is a mosquito, right? And that mosquito, the abundance of that mosquito is dictated by temperature, by water availability. And it's sort of a complex relationship here because you might think like, oh, more water, more mosquitoes. But in fact, if you have drought conditions, you end up with a lot of stagnant water, more stagnant water on the landscape, and also more warm, stagnant water, which is really great mosquito breeding ground. So you have this interplay between elevation, as you pointed out, latitude, climate, and the abundance of this Culex mosquito that is the primary vector for the disease. And we know at the southern extent of grouse range, that's where a lot of the issues have been occurring. Right? We've got conversations in Ohio right now about the future of their hunting season and declining opportunity there. We've got it listed as a state endangered species next door in Indiana. We have other examples, New Jersey, places where historically there's been good grouse hunting where the opportunities really dried up. In Pennsylvania, low elevation issues there. So there's certainly something going on at the southern extent of range. And we know, this kind of relates to what we're talking about with the reproductive behavior piece. If you're in really good body condition, you're sort of buffered against some of these disruptions, which is not to say that if you're a totally fit, healthy, kicking butt ruffed grouse and you get West Nile, it's no big deal. In fact, we know West Nile does result in high degrees of mortality for ruffed grouse. We also know that compared to other species like crows and ravens, where there's been some evidence of increasing resistance in the face of those exposures, we haven't seen, researchers have not seen that same kind of an immune response in species like ruffed grouse. So West Nile is certainly one of those factors that we should be paying attention to. I'm thinking back to some conversations I had recently with some of our chapter members in Ohio, and these are guys who hunted grouse like in the glory days, right? And in the 80s and 90s, and then all of a sudden in the early 2000s, it wasn't like all the habitat disappeared, but the grouse in a lot of places essentially disappeared from the habitat, which corresponds roughly with the arrival of Nile, which showed up here in the U.S. right around the turn of the century. So it makes sense that you have some of these mass die-off events. West Nile is a very logical explanation for those sorts of, and that's sort of an event to have occurred. And we also know we have places like Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, places where we continue to have robust ruffed grouse populations in the face of that disease being on the landscape. But it's also this question of the abundance, the populations of the mosquitoes, how much that's mediated by climate and these other factors associated with climate, temperature, moisture availability, et cetera. So I think bottom line, it is a factor for sure. And in terms of things that we can control, trying to do everything that we can to provide really good habitat to offset or mitigate the risk presented by a disease threat like West Nile is the best tool that we have in our toolbox to try to have an effect there. So it's complex, and I think it's something that we absolutely should be paying attention to, and it's an important part of the story, especially at the southern extent of the species range.
Yeah, with West Nile, it's like up in Northeast Ohio, the BMPs, for those that don't know what that is best management practices. It feels like, educating these air quote loggers, up there you have a lot of Amish logging companies.
Okay.
They still use the horses, and they still, and the ruts that are left and everything like that. It's just a breeding ground, because when you walk those logging roads, it just screams, West Nile, if you will. It's just that it'd be somehow, some way of just tying in and just doing some hardcore education, whether they wanted to hear it or not, getting some literature or something to these people. That the reclamation is not there. They're going in, logging these areas, they're following obituaries and stuff like that, and then they're just out. And then everybody gets a bad name because of X, Y, and Z company. Because it's not all the Amish. I don't want to pick on that minority group of people, but it's just, it's just. So with that being said, and I don't know again if there's a question in there or not, but with RGS, are you guys? Is there a direction of trying to? I mean, you got so much on your plate, so it's just nitpicking, like to do better of educating people on BMPs, so you can limit the amount of West Nile the possibility, setting it up to fail, those type situations. Is there any discussion? Like I said, you guys have so much on your plate and it's nitpicking, but it is an important type of thing to talk, at least discuss at least once in a while.
For sure. When I listen to you describe those impacts, a couple things that come to mind. I mean, first of all, just this idea that not all forestry practices are created equally. And I think that point alone is something that is lost on so many people. It's like they hear the word logging, or they hear the word timber harvest, or they hear the word I'm thinking about clear cutting. People have these reactions, like a visceral reaction to what that means, and there's so much room for interpretation and nuance and complexity. And so in this case, we're talking about issues with rutting. I start thinking about erosion and stream sedimentation and all of the crummy things that come along with road building. Like roads do create issues, especially if they're not established and maintained well. Yeah. So if you're somebody who cares about the woods, you should care about roads. You should care about how roads are being built, where they're being built, why they're being built, are they being decommissioned, how close are they to streams, how much potential additional mosquito breeding habitat are they creating. Like, there's a lot to consider there. And if you could get a snapshot in time right now of all the logging practices that are happening across the United States, across ownerships, or have happened in the past year, there'd be amazing, beautiful silviculture that is producing timber, that is benefiting wildlife, that's being done in a way that is very low impact. I'm thinking about a lot of the things that we do on frozen ground, where we're working in a season where you can operate heavy machinery without damaging sensitive soils.
Yeah.
And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have operators and also landowners making decisions for their forests that are very short-sighted and that are motivated exclusively by
dollars,
the economic bottom line, right? How much value can I extract right now?
Yeah.
And then everything in between. So I think it's just important to acknowledge the fact that it's not all the same. And in terms of the work that we do, oftentimes, whether we're working on private land or federal land or working on state land, we are very much in the business of holding ourselves and our contractors to very high expectations that are rooted in forest health. And if we are doing something that is not promoting the right trajectory for a piece of ground, we are not implementing our organizational mission at that point. On top of that, oftentimes, always on public land, if we're working on a national forest, or if we're working on state land, those agencies, whether it's the Department of Natural Resources or the Game Commission or the Forest Service, there are land management plans in place that are underpinning the decisions that are being implemented on the ground. And so there's another layer of sort of due diligence and planning and requirements on top of federal and state laws, Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act. We've got responsibilities in the National Environmental Policy Act, decisions that have been signed around protecting soil health. So there's a very high degree of accountability. And just from the standpoint of our mission and mission delivery, we don't want to be part of projects that are not making things better, right? That's our whole goal. And I think if we had a chance right now to stroll out in the woods and see some of the things that our organization has been a part of on private land, on federal land, on state land in the span of the last handful of years, but also going back even farther in time, right? But we've really scaled up our outputs in recent years. And I'm just thinking about all these agreements that we have where we're helping implement really good silviculture rooted in science. We know the effects of these kinds of treatments. We also know the effect of not taking action in these systems, which is really the biggest problem in these eastern forests, one of the biggest problems in these eastern forests. And so there's a lot of thought that's going into it, and a lot of intentionality, and a lot of checks and balances around ensuring that we are being guided by those considerations, and we've got science on our side.
Listening to that, which was great, by the way, I just keep going back to this. Like Cody and I mentioned quite a bit, and maybe too much, but maybe not enough. We know more about wildlife management than ever before. I mean, come on. With that being said, how is this occurring on our watch? Like, if Karl was in charge, Karl was king. Okay. Now, without getting yourself in trouble and fired, of course. Let's not do that today.
Don't fire me, man. I'm the king. What are we talking about?
That's right. You know
Who's
what?
going to fire the king? Keep rolling, baby.
Yeah. That's right. You can't fire me. Anyway, no, if Karl was king, like what do we need to do? Like, how do we fix this? I want to unfiltered, don't be professional. I want you to speak from the heart. How do we fix this? What can Give for Grouse Initiative and Ruffed Grouse Society, what can we do together to fix this? How does Karl fix this? If you were king, like again, Ben, don't listen for a second. Just Karl, speak from the heart. Like, how do we solve this, man?
I'd have no problem. I'd have no problem telling anybody.
No, like it's so frustrating. I'm listening to you talk. It's well delivered, and obviously on a podcast with Ranella and what have you. I mean, dude, I got a lot of respect for you. Like, I want to hear your like, again, unfiltered. Let's just tell me. Let's not beat around a bush. Let's not be political. Let's not this. Like, what do we need to do to turn this tide of getting more trees on the ground? And it's just not that simple, right? I mean, like, where do we put this product, right? And it's just like all this stuff. I mean, again, I'm rambling, so you can get your thoughts. It's so frustrating. Cody and I are doing this stuff, and it's just like we're running out of fingers to plug a hole. We thought it'd be simple. Like, hey, we just got to promote logging. We got to do this, right? And you know more than we do. Like, that's not it necessarily. It's like there's so much, the social dynamic. It's all this, but Karl's king, so he's going to wave his magic wand and do what?
Well, I think king's not the right position. But, well, so here's why, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the fact that you guys have been putting so much thought and effort into trying to plug holes and trying to tell the story about good forestry and trying to raise public awareness, that is significant, and that is part of the equation, and it speaks to what I think the bigger needs are. And I say king's not the right position because a king doesn't effectively dictate to people what to think. Right. And I think this is a very complex nut to try to crack, but I'll give you like a few of the things that are definitely holding us back that I think solutions exist and they are within reach, but also they are not hanging low and easy to pick. Like, we're talking about some ambitious things that we would need to try to change. So a few that come to mind. The social license piece is huge. Like, people have a lot of strongly held opinions about nature and the environment and forests that are rooted in emotion. And I'm not saying emotion isn't valid, because emotion matters, man. Emotion, in a lot of cases, emotion ends up carrying the day. But a lot of people have very strongly held opinions about things that they don't know much about. And that's not just in like the conservation forestry space. There are people with all kinds of strongly held opinions about things where they haven't done their due diligence to actually really inform their opinions.
Yes.
But I'll try not to get too wide ranging with this response to your question. But I think on the conservation side, like I'm thinking about a cool book right now. You guys may have come across it, Ethan Tapper's How to Love a Forest. If you haven't,
we had him on. Last episode, yeah.
So Ethan is a perfect person to talk about right now, because he did a great job in that book from the standpoint of somebody who really knows forestry, professional forester, knows the science, but really coming at the issue from a place of emotion, right? Trying to connect. Here's why it may be worth it to think about using an herbicide that had, this nasty chemical that I wish I didn't have to use. When it comes to dealing with a bunch of barberry on this property, there's no other way to scale up the impact that I need to have to try to steward this forest. Or here's why, as somebody who loves wildlife, that killing more does on this property may be the thing that this landscape needs. Or here's why putting a chainsaw into this tree to open up the canopy may be the thing that's most in service to this ecosystem. So trying to explain some of those really complex trade-offs where he's got years of education, not just in the classroom, but in the woods, underpinning these decisions. And he's still wrestling individual tree by individual tree. What's the right thing to do for this forest? It helps provide some context over that complexity. So one thing is trying to engage thoughtfully with folks who care about the environment and have opinions that need to be respected and need to be addressed thoughtfully. Like how do create some space to try to move the conversation where we can elevate awareness around how much we do know. Cody, I think it was you who said, like, we know more now about wildlife management. Was that you, Eric, made that comment? So we know more about forestry now than we have ever known as well, right? Like these fields are continuing to be refined and improved and enhanced. And I think a lot of folks still are caught in this perception of what forestry is from 100 years ago or 200 years ago, when it's like just here to extract and pillage the land. So there's the social license piece that is absolutely huge. And having worked in federal government and seen all these lawsuits and trying to get into these debates, like I did a lot of work with Mexican spotted owls out in the West, where the forests are burning up. And one of the big issues with forest health is the fact that there hasn't been enough disturbance in those systems. So we have tons of fuel accumulation due to the landscape starving for a century. Now the landscape is poised to burn hotter and bigger than it has in the past, right? So this question of, do you manage the forests in occupied spotted owl habitat, or do you take a hands-off approach and potentially lose hundreds of thousands of acres in a single fire?
Yeah.
Like the point is, these debates occur all over the map. In the East, this question of how much active management is appropriate versus letting the forest be the forest, that's a debate that we're engaged with all over the place. Some places it's a hotter topic than others, but we end up spending, and I don't mean we, the Ruffed Grouse Society, American Woodcock Society, I mean we, society, end up spending so much time and so much money embroiled in these debates, where if we could recognize that there's actually like some common ground around what we would like to achieve, i.e. keeping forests, maintaining robust wildlife. We have a playbook that we know what we need to do to achieve those goals, but we have just this morass of socio-political infighting among different perspectives and groups that is, to say it's counterproductive is like the understatement of understatements. It is a huge drag that only benefits people who profit from conflict. And there are plenty, and the problem is there are plenty of people who profit from conflict in the system, right? If you're an organization where you rally your members around fighting the good fight, and you're suing the Forest Service or you're suing whatever state, and you're able to say, hey, we're taking these folks to court, you're generating membership dollars, you can have a message, save the forest. We're here to save what does save the forest mean, right? People don't have time to have a conversation about what does save the forest mean. They do have time to be like, I'm going to send my check for $50 because these people are doing something good and I like forests. That's like as deep as the conversation gets for a lot of folks. So that's one. And we can talk more social license. There's a couple others I want to touch on though.
Well, let me interrupt, and Cody, I apologize.
Yeah,
and I'll let you have the floor here. But no, it's just funny that you mentioned Ethan. It's just that's like he is here at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His message. And that's the thing. It's like having a degree. I have a degree. You have a degree.
Yeah.
And we've been using our degree and this and this and this. And I'm going to butcher this. So I apologize. Hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. And if I offend anybody, I apologize. But it's just like we're leaning on the biologists, and we should, because they should lead. But they should not be afraid to pass it on when they see something good, while interjecting certain things at the right time. Like Ethan. Like I was kind of taken back that you mentioned him.
Yeah.
Because he is, again, at the right time, at the right place. He can find that emotional connection that the millennial and the Gen Z and all this stuff can connect with. And it's like we should be leaning on people like that. And don't be afraid of the new outside voice. Like, don't be afraid to listen to somebody that is from the outside. God, am I saying this right? I mean, it's just, we seem to be afraid, like, this person's not in the clique. Let's not listen. And I'm being dramatic, of course, but it's just like we don't have time for this. Like, we should be. I'm not saying use Ethan. I'm not saying that, but that mentality. He found a loophole that we can use by creating and build upon that connection, that the ability to communicate that you and Cody were talking about earlier. Is this all making sense? It's just like, let's like Cody and I, we always kind of like, we have the ability to storytell, and we have the ability to come up with great content. And it seems to be, we're slowly making ground that people are connecting that are not grouse people.
Yeah.
Let's build on that. And I'm not saying just Cody and I or Ethan, but I'm rambling, but hopefully you're getting the message. Let's not be afraid to listen to the new people or the outside looking in type of people. That makes sense. I butchered all that, what I want to say. But,
no, man, I'm totally tracking. Did you want to chime in, Cody?
No, I think I understand what Eric's getting at. It's you kind of mentioned it, Karl, that everybody, and when we had Ethan on, I made the comment to him that his writing is very thoughtful, very intentional, but also very vulnerable. And I think that man,
he pours himself out in that book.
He does, and there's such
a number of fronts.
Exactly. There's a lot of space for that, and we've talked about it in the episode. I think that's why so many people can relate to his writing and to his book, because you could be a fifth generation timber cutter and understand exactly where he's coming from. And then to steal Ethan's description, you could be, a forest bathing hippie on the very far left, and you can relate to a lot of his writing. And a lot of what Eric and I talk about in our messaging, and you mentioned it too, is that we all want the same thing, which is, no matter where you're coming from, what point of view, what perspective, we all want healthy forests, we all want healthy wildlife. I think the storytelling, the communication, the messaging, as you know, is a big part of that. I think what Eric and I bring to the table, and we talk about this in the circle of Back to Grouse, if you could get somebody in front of a ruffed grouse on a spring morning, and that whole ensemble, that whole orchestra, the whole theater that takes place, like, you get in, and I can't tell you the number of different birds. I don't know them all, but I heard the whippoorwill, a junco, a wood thrush, a robin, and then of course the king. He's up on the log or the rock, and they drum. Eric and I, we all often say, if you could take somebody with us in the blind and not give them any context whatsoever to the state of ruffed grouse, especially here in Appalachia, and say, hey, come join me, watch this bird this morning. And it goes back to observation being our greatest gift. Just, hey, come be a birder with me. You can be a birder and bird for ruffed grouse.
Oh, yeah.
And just exactly, yeah. And come sit with me, and let's just enjoy the spring morning. Hear a turkey gobble, hear a whippoorwill, watch the spring woods come to life, especially here, the mountain laurel starting to flower, the azaleas, the rhododendron, and then just sit and observe and watch the bird. And then at the end of the morning, once he goes and hops off and goes to forage and hang out for the rest of the day until he does it again in the afternoon, then interject what's going on and why. And you would be hard pressed to find somebody who would not do whatever they could to help the species. What prescription that might be for a forest, it might not. It might be to do nothing. Maybe that forest needs fire. Maybe that forest needs a timber harvest. So it's, like you said, communicating it thoughtfully, and doing it in a way that you approach them with an understanding that we want the same thing, and say, hey, this is what we got to do. Because that's another thing that I took away from Ethan's book, and I can't remember if he wrote this or not, but it was an underlying theme that it's a bigger act, because so many people are against fire or against the timber harvest, which is active forest management. But Ethan, in so many words, says, and I agree 100%, as I'm sure you will as well, that it's a bigger act of negligence to do nothing than it is to do those things: fire, timber harvest, herbicide, whatever the case may be. And nowhere is it written that we have to do any of this forest management. Nowhere is it written that there have to be ruffed grouse on the landscape, or golden wing warblers, or chestnut-sided warblers, or whippoorwills. But it comes down to a choice. We can do this, and these are the consequences. You mentioned it, and I mentioned it to anybody who I can get in their ear about the 2025 State of the Birds Report. For eastern forests, 27%, I think, of our bird species, disturbance-dependent species, are experiencing populations declines. We don't have to disturb our forests. That is a choice we can make to not do that. But in not creating these disturbances, fire or timber harvest, this is the consequence. This is what it costs. A forest without whippoorwills, a forest without grouse, a forest without all these birds. So to circle it all back, we all want the same thing. And where I film grouse is just a beautiful piece of property, mainly maintained by fire, beautiful native habitat. I've seen more ruffed grouse than I have white-tailed deer, which is hard to believe. And I tell anybody who will listen, if you walk this property, and like I said, that's mainly maintained by fire, but the same habitat could be created through a timber harvest. If you could walk that property and just observe the wildlife, observe the native habitat, especially this time of year down here where everything's flowering and leafing out and coming to life, we're all on the same page. We all want the same thing. And another thing Ethan mentioned as well, if you're a grouse, if you're a golden wing warbler, if you're flora, if you're native habitat, you don't care how it happens. You just care that it happens, whether it's fire, and we can't rely on natural disturbances like Helene or any of these bigger drivers of disturbance to create these habitats. But if you're a grouse, you don't care if it's logged, you don't care if it's fire, you don't care if it's natural or biological. You just care that it happens. And I think we have to, as society, adopt that same mindset. Best prescription for a forest may be to do nothing, depending on where it is in its age class. Maybe it needs fire, maybe it needs timber, but we all want the same thing, and it's just kind of goes back to that mindset.
Yeah, but Cody, that's everything you said is like the point that I did a horrible job of answering or asking the question to Karl. It's just, do you want a biologist in today's environment? Do we have the millennial generation, or do we have the Gen Z, the 20-year-olds, the future? Okay, my generation, Gen X and older, like what, you know what? Yeah, we're voters, right? But do you want a biologist that has zero communication skill, that has every knowledge of a ruffed grouse, a gestation period, all this stuff, delivering the message on how to cut, we need to cut, or do you want the mentality of like what Ethan is talking about, that passion, making somebody connect with it? And my answer is this: is we should be learning from not Ethan himself. It's just the narrative of what he is trying to do. Like we need to learn from what he has written. Again, not him and his necessarily, but how he communicated how to do it. And Cody, like everything Cody was saying, proves that's my point. Like, do you want facts and figures that are just drowned out, boring, or do you want somebody to stand up there? And like, again, we should be learning from this. You have the floor.
Well, 100%. We want storytellers. We want people who are able to connect with those different audiences. I'll give a plug for one of our team members, this amazing forester we have working on the Green Mountain National Forest. Her name is Melly Napper. You can find her on Instagram with the handle Melly the Forester.
Nice.
And she is out in the woods talking about what she's doing, why she's doing it. She does not come off as a pointy-headed, egghead nerd. She comes off as somebody who absolutely loves forests and is out there working her butt off to try to contribute to leaving them in a better state. And we want, I want thousands of Melly Nappers. I want thousands of Ethan Tappers. I want people understanding, even if they don't make it out, Cody, to the grouse drumming blind, having some sense. And this is related to the other point that I want to make here. I think we need a lot more people who recognize that the state of our natural systems is a key determinant on our prosperity as a society. Even if you're not a grouse hunter, even if you never want to go out and look at a drumming grouse, the quality of life for all of us hinges to a large extent on whether or not we do a good job of taking care of the systems that we're a part of. And we're not on a great trajectory currently. And these species that are more susceptible to change than we are, they're sort of canaries in the coal mine telling us like, things aren't great. We're not doing a great job of taking care of these natural systems. And I think, we talked about the social license piece where there's all this infighting among people who have a strong opinion about forests. There's a whole lot of other people out there who aren't even thinking about forests, right? Or aren't even thinking about nature or the land. How do we get some engagement and awareness there? And that relates to the conversation around funding. And I want to be clear, like, we absolutely will not ever be able to just pay for all this forest management work to happen. There needs to be supply chain. There needs to be a timber industry of forest products. There's all kinds of great innovation there. But we've also lost a lot of capacity in our forest products industry with the pulp mill disruptions and just the changing economics around forest products. So there's an industry piece. There's a conservation financing piece, like our funding model for North American wildlife conservation is in a very challenging place right now with state agency budgets declining, the work getting more expensive, hunting license sales declining. We've got to get our act together as a society when it comes to investing in conservation, not just for wildlife, not just for fisheries, but for ourselves and for future people to live in a world that's beautiful and healthy and a source of well-being as opposed to a source of sickness and disease. Like, these are things that we should be investing in as a society. So relevance, funding, social license, engagement, these are answers to the question. And a king doesn't have the ability to really dictate any of that, right? What it takes is a lot of people who are thoughtful. And Cody, I love the vision of the grouse blind visit and bringing somebody out there. The thing that's so cool about that vision is you're trying to set up a space where the shared awe and common ground is almost self-evident. It's like you don't have to explain, right? That you both care about some amazing thing that you're experiencing together. And I think we have this tendency, maybe now more than ever, to just immediately define like, oh, you're on that side of the issue, I'm on this side. Oh, you're a hunter, I'm a non-hunter. Oh, you're a preservationist, I'm a conservationist. These aren't new debates, but they feel more heated and divisive and
very tribal. Yeah.
Right. Well, and tribalism, not a new thing for our species either, right? But it feels like we're in this space now where there's just a lot of divisiveness. And I hope and I believe that a lot of people are fatigued with that level of divisiveness. And I think that to me creates space for there to be an appetite for more like seeking of the common ground, which I think is kind of what you're getting at, Cody, with this idea of like, come out to the woods with me, check this thing out.
Right. Yeah.
That's an effort to seek the common ground. So that is a solution. And that's something that the cool thing is, that's something that all of us, whether you're a king or a commoner, has the ability to engage with other people like that. And that's what it means to be a member of a community too, is like, tell me why you feel that way. I want to understand your perspective. Let me tell you about my perspective. Those kinds of conversations are what we need orders of magnitude more of with respect to conservation, with respect to a whole host of other issues that I think we could make a lot of progress on if we're willing to kind of open up our ears and engage thoughtfully. So that, I think, is like the main ingredient to achieve what we're talking about here when it comes to ramping up outcomes for forest health.
Well, I wish we needed another hour because I didn't get to like 3/4 of what I got us sidetracked, and I apologize, Cody. We like the biology part of it. Cody and I love learning, and we were bouncing something off of each other. We were coming back from Pittsburgh, doing a podcast with some friends, and Cody brought up this theory on passenger pigeons and stuff like that, and what have you. Oh yeah, I won't steal his thunder, but we were bouncing back and forth all this stuff, and how did the debate of we need to, like, people ask us, well, what did they do about grouse back in the day, before man, like, well, how did grouse occur? So we come up with this theory, and it was just great. And I was driving, and I looked over, and I said, I just love learning, and that's why I was excited to have you on, but I stole it, and I apologize. I wanted to hear all that stuff. But Cody, real quick before I want to hear this, tell him your theory, the passenger pigeon.
Well, no, Ethan mentioned passenger pigeons briefly in his book, the biological clear cuts, and then Karl, you spoke about the passenger pigeons in the podcast with Ranella, and it's in. I haven't read his book that you referenced, but
do you have a copy of it?
No, but it's Peter Matheson, The Tree Where Man Was Born.
Oh yeah,
I've read. I need to read.
Matheson was a genius, man. I mean, National Book Award winner. I did some work over in China. He wrote this great book on snow leopard conservation. Guy's amazing. And his eloquence in talking about species loss in North America since the arrival of the first European settlers, it's crazy. And the account of the passenger pigeon in his book, so Wildlife in America is the book, man. It should be mandatory reading for anybody who's getting up at 4 a.m. to go watch grouse from a blind.
I need to read that one because it's been a long time since I read this one, and I remember how much I loved it. And I remember you mentioning Wildlife in America in your podcast with Ranella. But Eric and I started breaking it down, and the relationship between passenger pigeons and ruffed grouse, pre-settlement. It's once you kind of think about it and give it a little intentional thought and why passenger pigeons nested where they did, and then the impact that they had on forests, and then what happened as a result of their impact on forests. Because Eric and I get asked a lot because we advocate so much for forest management and logging. And I had a buddy ask me a couple months ago, and again, I'm always in his ear about grouse and always in his ear about forest management. And he said, well, how did ruffed grouse habitat get created before logging? And I got kind of caught with my pants down a little bit. And I was like, oh, well, biological clear cuts and wildfires, this, that, and the other. But the whole passenger pigeon thing, it makes perfect sense when you think about how rough, creating young forest way back when. And they would do it landscape scale, more or less, not in hundreds of thousands of acres, but in a sizable patchwork design. How we would create a patchwork of young forest on a smaller scale on our own property now, or with work with the Forest Service or on public land. And I don't know, you could explain it better than I could, but just how they would basically deforest a forest. And even the droppings would have such an impact on the vegetation response. And it was God's way of setting back succession. And they wouldn't, that they obviously wouldn't visit that same site the next nesting season. They would go to another. So as a result, you would have all these patchwork, or you would have this patchwork of habitats across landscape scale of early successional, young forest, mature woodlands. And when you give it some thought, you're like, man, that's pretty darn cool to think of how these two bird species, who prior to reading it in Ethan's book and then hearing you talk about it on the podcast, I would have never given any thought between the relationship between a passenger pigeon and a ruffed grouse. Yeah. And then thinking about it now, you're like, the ruffed grouse almost couldn't exist way back when without the passenger pigeon.
Certainly not to the extent that they did. And that's right. Exactly right. And other species too. And it's just a reminder of how much has changed in such a short period of time, right? Like the loss of that species is haunting. We all know the story. You think about the distribution of bison and elk across the North American continent as well. You think about just the amount of habitat that we've developed to reside at the densities that we reside at today. There's just been, if you envision the arc of time at even just since the last ice age, which in geologic terms is not a long time, right? You still have thousands and thousands of years, and it's like all this change, all this, the species assemblage being disrupted. So these forests of the East, in the absence of passenger pigeons, and in the absence of other drivers of disturbance, we have an unprecedented condition on this landscape compared to anything that's ever existed in the history of the continent, where you have had a tremendous amount of recruitment and growth happening essentially simultaneously to give rise to these even-aged forests that are closed canopy, and essentially the no action alternative is the management paradigm. Just hands off, let's see what happens. But then add in a bunch of other non-native invasive species issues, add in overabundant white-tailed deer, take away fire. And then you mentioned, I love that you're talking about the State of the Birds report, by the way, but it's like, no kidding. Of course, all those species are declining. It's like the worst possible. The only thing that would be worse is if you slipped it all off and paved it. That would be
Is that
worse.
Bad? Should we not do that?
Yeah. So it'd be good for, the wily rock dove would probably still be persisting on popcorn. But
awesome.
The passenger pigeon is so much more than the loss of the species. It's the loss of this driver of functional ecology. And I think that's the thing it's lost on so many people. They're like, oh, the river of birds, imagine how many there must have been. But you got to take it those next couple steps and think about what that would have been like on the ground.
Yeah.
And those accounts of the gunners going out and shooting, like, you can't, it's hard to wrap your head around the accounts, the way that people describe those birds descending on the landscape and just nuking it.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that we sit there right now and we kind of chuckle and all like, man, if we could go back, right? If we knew what we know now, right? And I didn't do it the other day. I had the opportunity to use that card about the passenger pigeon the other day. And I didn't respond. It wasn't at the right place, right time. But I got to think to myself, you're shaking your head. But what you are choosing now, I thought to myself, your decisions now are getting rid of the passenger pigeon of yesterday. Like, okay, we don't have that. Now we have logging. We have this. You're laughing and chuckling and, oh my God, we should have done better. Well, you have the opportunity now to do that. And you're choosing to kill the passenger pigeon. You know? You would do it again.
And it also frames this idea up that somehow we couldn't possibly be a source of anything good for the land, right? It's like people are the problem. It's part of this worldview of don't mess up nature, which assumes that somehow we are not part of the system.
Yeah.
And when you think about a closed island of suitable habitat, which this planet is, you know, drifting in this giant vacuum of cold, dark space. Here we have this little island of habitat. To not acknowledge and think in terms of our role and our responsibilities in the system is totally missing the mark. So we've talked about How to Love a Forest, great book. We've talked about Wildlife in America, great book. I'm going to give you two other real quick recommendations. One is on this topic of communication, a guy who is a world-class scientist, but also a great critic of science communication in this book. Check out David Suzuki's The Legacy. One of the things he does in this book is make a really compelling case for why our approach, like you guys were talking earlier about, do we want to leave it up to the biologists to be the communicators? Well, part of it is the biologists are publishing their work in peer-reviewed journals. And there's an expectation when you're doing that you are divorcing yourself from any subjectivity. Like, here are my data. Here's what I found. I can't tell you what I feel about anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, if I were to tell you, you know, when I was doing that bear research, I felt very invested in these bears that I had collars, and I cared. Like when we found out that one of them got hit by a car, I was bummed out. I remember collaring, like, there's no place for that in the literature, right? That's you can't be soft-hearted. It's like, you've got to be totally objective. Here are the data, here are the findings. That's the culture of science. And in this book, The Legacy, among many other things, David Suzuki does a cool job sort of dismantling that approach, critiquing that approach. So that's a solid recommendation. And I want to dig in a little bit further into this idea that human beings are absolutely we are the central force within the natural world right now. So the other one, and I'm hoping you guys are both gonna be like, oh yeah, already read it, of course. But Robin Wall Kimmerer, Braiding Sweetgrass. You guys haven't read Braiding Sweetgrass?
I'm sorry.
I have heard it. I've heard a lot of
phenomenal.
It, but I have not read it.
Must read. And in Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about, as a college professor, going into the classroom and asking her students, and these are all like natural resource ecology type students, giving them the assignment to explain the relationship between people and the land, essentially. And what she gets back from all these students who are in the process of dedicating themselves to careers in conservation is basically a litany of all the ways in which people screw things up. Acidification of the oceans, climate change, industrial pollution, you know, just on and on and on. All these very valid concerns about the negative impacts that people have on the land. But the point that she makes in this particular chapter is how blind all of us are, really, but these students as representatives, how blind we are to all of the ways and all the opportunities that there are for people to be providers of beauty and health for the land. This idea of, like, how do we take care of the things that take care of us? How do we engage in reciprocal relationships to the places that we love? And that's sort of an approach, as opposed to thinking, well, here are the people over here, don't mess up the nature over there. thinking in terms of how do we take an active role in caring for these things and trying to pass them on in a state that's better than we found them. That is not new thinking, right? There are cultures all around the world, and there have been cultures all around the world, including on this continent historically, where that worldview was a cornerstone of cultural identity. So why would we not be looking for ways to perpetuate a philosophy of taking care of these systems that provide us with so much? I'll use hunters as an example. And I grew up hunting. I'll hunt as long as I'm able to get out in the woods. And that activity, those experiences, to me, engenders a very strong sense of responsibility. Like, I want to be in the mode of doing what I can to take care of the places and the species that give so much to me and so much to my family. So I think it's very natural. We are wired for reciprocity. If somebody does something nice for you, you remember that. And the next time you have an opportunity to do something nice for that person, you want to do it. We are very good at keeping track of those sorts of interactions. Why would we not extend that same sort of a relationship to non-human spaces and species? I think that's a really powerful question for us to ponder.
Yeah. I think it's there's I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Ivan Carter. He's a conservationist from Africa. I've done, or used to do, a lot of work for him a long time ago, some film work.
Awesome.
And, I filmed a TV show with or for him called Carter's Wars, about the human wildlife conflict in Africa. And he made a comment one time about, in so many words, that people, the wrong person, the wrong group of people can do so much harm to wildlife and wild lands, this, that, and the other. But on the other side of the coin, the right people can fix past atrocities and do so much good in the future. And it kind of goes back to, I think we all kind of touched on it, that maybe way back when Mother Nature could regulate herself, and the idea that we could just leave forests and nature alone and all will be okay. It's a very romantic idea. If we're honest, maybe we all wish that was still the case, but all the things you listed, Karl, that it's just, that's not reality anymore, with pests and pathogens and invasive species and high deer densities and fragmented landscapes and lack of disturbances and all these problems that native wildlife and wild lands have to face, that they need human intervention. And that's not an egotistical perspective. It's just, it goes back to stewardship. And there was a big Forest Service and Nature Conservancy burn here where I'm from last week. They burned 7,500 acres, and it was gorgeous to watch happen.
Awesome.
And they rolled a lot of smoke, and a lot of people in the community were upset about it because turkeys were nesting and babies were being born, this, that, and the other. And that was a lot of the commentary, is that man is doing wrong, nature needs to take care of itself, and all these bad things that we were doing. And, maybe at one point that absolutely has been the case. Like you've said, with, the exploitation of natural resources, and you can point to so many, Kate, the passenger pigeon, we've done so much wrong. But on the other side of the coin, like you mentioned, it is in our blood. It's in our DNA to participate with the natural world. That's how we were created and how we were designed. That's part of the essence of being human. So in 2026, this new age of society and how we manage our resources, it goes back to what I said, how I think it's a bigger act of negligence to do nothing than it is to do something. And the right people can do so much good for land and wildlife, whether that's a burn or whatever the case may be. And it's like you mentioned, hunting and it being your responsibility. I think that's something, again, that a lot of people can relate to, whether you're a consumer or non-consumer, just leaving this place better than we found it. And you don't have to hunt to participate in the natural world. You don't have to do photography or active management to participate in the natural world and to want to leave it better than we found it. But it goes back to that understanding and this baseline that that's what we all want. And that should be the end goal for all of us, if we can get on the same page to achieve that goal.
Very well stated.
Karl, before you comment, I got to get going. I don't want to be the guy that ruins this conversation. Cody, keep talking. I wanted to say something before I bugged out. And Cody, I'll get with you here later this evening to wrap our stuff up if you want. I do want to say this, and I apologize for leaving and unprofessional, but I've been managing wildlife for over 30 years professionally with state agency and other. And there was one person that changed my whole life on the direction of how I wanted to manage, and that was Dr. Craig Harper. I don't know if you know who Craig
I do.
Harper.
Yep.
Listening to him, I was just so pulled to his style of management, and I was listening to every word and all this stuff. And I'm a very excitable boy. I'm very, like, I love listening to new people, but at the same time, I'm very, I pick and choose. And my whole 30 years, Karl was one of those guys that I listened, I respected. There was nothing I wouldn't do. Hung on to every word. And again, I've talked to you and listened to you for only about an hour or so, and not to sound corny or anything like that, I respect the hell out of you. I can't wait to build a relationship with you. You are the right person at the right time. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to fight right alongside of you. And I'm sure Cody feels the same way. Appreciate you and what you're doing. If there's anything that we can do to help you, we are a drop of a phone away. But I put you right there with Karl. Just what little bit I've talked to you, and I'll be the one that probably disappoints you instead of the other. No, man, I appreciate everything that you said. It's just like listening to Ethan talk on our podcast the other day and listening to you, and Cody corrected me. There's many ways to win the Super Bowl, but it's just like, man, I got a lot of learning to do, even though I've been in the business for a very long time. How, say the right things, not get emotional right out of the gate and everything like that. And I'd love to listen to you. I want you guys to keep talking. Cody, I'll hook up with you. Again, I appreciate you very much. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, man, it's mutual. Thanks, Eric, for the kind words. And I really respect and appreciate what you guys are both doing as well, and admire the commitment. So be happy to come back anytime. We can pick it up.
Oh, yeah. You guys keep talking. I'm going to bug out. And,
no, we'll do a part 2 sometime, Karl, where we can get more.
Yeah. Oh, no, you guys can keep talking.
Stuff.
Yeah, you guys can keep talking. I don't want to be the guy that stops this. If you want,
I got all the time in the world, Karl. If you want to keep,
I gotta go.
Then we can.
I'll let you guys argue that fact. I apologize. I'm so
Thanks,
sorry.
Eric.
All right, see ya.
See ya. Yeah, I can hang tight for another few, man. If you got another question,
happy to. Just to pivot a little bit. I am not a biologist, but my mind works in the way of one, and I love to nerd out on the biology and the habitat of stuff. So for ruffed grouse, I would love to get your thoughts on the impact invasive species can have on a specialist species like grouse, because they need a very specific type of habitat. And invasive species, as prevalent as they are, as long as they have been here, I don't think we quite know the negative impact they have in totality just yet. So I would love to hear any thoughts that you may have on them, and how they impact grouse specifically and in an ecosystem. And what I think is interesting about ecosystem is the word system. When we think of deer habitat or grouse habitat, it's a very linear or a very singular visual that we create in our mind's eye for what that might look like. But when we think about an ecosystem and how that life from underneath our feet all the way up to canopy dominant trees and then all the life in between, when we break it down and think of habitat in terms of a system, then I think the negative impacts and how invasive species can disrupt that system, then it starts to open our eyes a little bit to how a species like grouse could result in a declining localized population, or like we talked about earlier, unhealthier individuals.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot depends on the specifics of the location and what we're talking about in terms of the particular invasive species. I think in some cases, I'm where I am here in the upper Midwest, we are dealing with a lot of buckthorn and honeysuckle. Mm-hmm. And I know at least with buckthorn, a century ago, the Department's natural resources were encouraging people to plant the stuff because it was such good wildlife habitat, right? Like creating thick cover of, for bedding. You've got some soft mass with berry production. And once that stuff establishes, it basically outcompetes everything else in the system. You get no recruitment of any sort of understory plants. It becomes very difficult to grow any other woody vegetation. It just gets a toehold and kind of takes over. And that certainly flies in the face of having the complexity in the system. And I think that's one of the biggest issues when we're talking about impacts associated with non-native invasive species, is it tends to simplify the system. You have whether it's an insect, whether it's vegetation, you have an impact on the native species that results in less diversity. And for species like ruffed grouse, they depend heavily on mast. They depend heavily on species like aspen for the buds and the catkins that they feed on. And anytime you compromise the availability of the food supply and compromise the ability of the vegetation to provide the structural component that a species needs, you're going to impact the ability of that species to persist. So I think the general rule of thumb is the cost of simplification, mm-hmm. the drive towards monotypic stands, less structural complexity, just vast swaths of very simplified habitat, and what that means for not just grouse but for other forest wildlife as well, and also other forest plant communities. So I'm just thinking about where I am here in southern Wisconsin, where the property that I'm on, I have like a little 4-acre woodlot where I could spend countless hours doing work at a very small scale, and it's all buckthorn and honeysuckle with an overstory of dead ash trees that are all post emerald ash borer.
Right.
So it's just like this perfect example of what can happen when you have multiple non-native invasive species issues playing out. And without intervention, it would just be a big thicket of buckthorn and honeysuckle. So trying to clear that out and reestablish some native tree species and try to keep those from getting eaten by deer, it could be a full-time job just trying to take care of a few acres, which one of the reasons I enjoy doing that is it really frames up like the scale of the issue when you start talking about thousands or tens of thousands or millions of acres, and you know what it takes to get anything done on a few acres. It can be a little humbling, but also inspirational because you can see that progress happening.
Oh, for sure. No, invasive species, it's down here. We got a lot of them, but our equivalent would be autumn olive. And I think a lot of people, an autumn olive, it forms a thicket. It's cover and food, but and grouse can live in it. But when you think of that a forest ecosystem, I've always wondered, that our wildlife have evolved obviously on a native plant community. The nutrient density between a non-native invasive species versus, so like soft mast, just use spicebush for an example, is a spicebush berry fruit more nutrient dense and healthier for a ruffed grouse to consume because that is what it has evolved on versus, it will eat a wine berry or an autumn olive berry, but is it the same nutritional quality? And then of course the insect load, which again, our insects are and you may be able to confirm or deny this, but I have heard, because you'll see like the autumn olive down here is flowering right now, and you'll see insects on it, but our insects did not evolve to pull nectar from autumn olive. I think I read somewhere that, again, it kind of goes back to nutrient density maybe, but just use one of our native bumblebees, for example. It may visit an autumn olive flower, but it's not getting the same nutritional benefits or the same. It's not as healthy of a visit to an autumn olive flower as it would be to a native flower. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And then again, you break that system down, and they're non-native invasive species support fewer insects. Insects are kind of maybe the baseline of a forest ecosystem. So it's, I don't know, when you break it down in those layers, it becomes very, very complex, but it opens your eyes to how damaging those invasive species can be and how they can disrupt an entire ecosystem. And you mentioned the deer too, which is another thing we've talked about on this podcast, just here and there with the few guests that we've had. And I think on localized, probably private properties, localized populations, I think high deer densities they're in so many words, they can be in no fault of their own, but white-tailed deer can be a similar ecosystem disruptor on a different level in the same way that invasive species can be, because they have such a significant negative impact on native vegetation and hardwood regeneration that when they can literally eat specialist species out of house and home to a degree.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Oh man, there's no doubt about it. We have more, depending on where we're talking about. There's certainly places within the United States right now, many of them, where we've got higher deer densities, larger populations present than at any point in history. I mean, we've made just phenomenal habitat, and then also turn these habitats into refugia where there's, in many cases, very little, if any, predation. Mm-hmm. And the outlook is not good for the deer, not good for the habitat, not good for people. I'm thinking about all the issues with tick-borne illnesses and car deer vehicle collisions. Lots of problems. And as somebody who loves deer too, right? Like, I mean, you use the language to no fault of their own, rightly so. I think it's a bit of a travesty where you have this iconic species that starts getting into the realm of being perceived as a nuisance, right?
Yeah.
And in a lot of instances, we are down that path where deer are no longer the poster child of conservation success. They're being perceived as a nuisance. And it's not unlike the issue with forest health, where we have the tools, we have the science, we know what we could do to manage those herds and benefit from their presence in ways that we're not currently. And for a similar host of reasons, social license, the challenges of trying to manage on complex ownerships, different values around wildlife and natural resources. We're left sort of wringing our hands and watching as disease issues and overpopulation rule the day. Mm-hmm. So spot on with your thoughts on what you're seeing there in your neck of the woods, for sure.
It's interesting. There's a lot of parallels, actually, because we talk about, we can advocate until we're blue in the face about forest management and cutting timber. But Eric said, as you know, it's a very nuanced problem. We can advocate for cutting every stick of wood off the mountain, but where are we going to take the product? Where are we going to put all that wood? The same thing, the same problem applies to high deer densities. We can say we need to shoot deer. Well, what are you going to do with all of them? I can only eat, but so many. You can only eat, but so many. You can only donate, but so many. So it's, a lot of parallels to a very nuanced problem. But I'll let you get to it, man. Like I said, I wish Eric could have hung around for a little bit longer, but there's a lot.
I'm happy to rejoin you guys another time, man. No doubt.
We absolutely will. Like I said, there's a lot that I'd love to unpack about forest management, how the whole nuanced problems of it all, the nuanced solutions. We didn't really get into that, so there's a lot of rabbit holes I'd be happy to dive down with you for sure when the next time comes around.
Sounds good.
Well, appreciate it, man. Truly. I said at the beginning, put a lot of pressure on you, high expectations, but you exceeded all of them.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. And like I said, man, the work that you guys are doing, just big kudos. I think the thoughtfulness and willingness to try to open up conversations with other people is just tremendously valuable. And both of you talking about pursuing lifelong learning and being curious and wanting to pick up information, that totally strikes a chord. I love looking over your shoulders, and I'm imagining what titles are on all these books behind you.
I got, well, if you're a reader, we should do another episode of favorite books. I got a little bit of everything.
Well, braiding sweetgrass, man. Dig that one up. That's definitely worthy of anybody who cares about conservation and the environment. That one's thought-provoking for sure.
Yeah, I've heard about that one. I will definitely order it, but I will let you get to it, sir. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise. Have a great night. We'll chat again soon.
You betcha. Well, the patent pending stretch stamp of approval. Karl Malcolm earn it.
Well, you know what? I found his knowledge a little arrogant. You know, look at me. I know about genitalia and all this other stuff.
I'm a genius.
Yeah, I'm smart. Look at me. I mean, oh my God. Joking aside, what was that? That was an education, man. I didn't want to stop. I hated to stop. You could talk to that guy forever. There was so many questions left on the table. Come on now, man.
Truly.
I mean, come on. I mean, where do you go?
Try not to be a prisoner of the moment, you know, and try to look at guests in the conversation objectively. But it's funny. The podcast we did with Tim at the end of it in our wrap up, like we're doing right now, is like, when I get older, when I grow up, I want to be Tim. You know, I want to be a Tim Flanagan. Got some years to go before I get to that. So first I want to be Karl. And then when I grow up, I want to be Karl. And then when I get older, I want to be Tim.
Eric Long. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It was
You'll just,
I don't know what to say truly, because you and I talk about it, and we talked about it in the last episode, and you and I have talked about it privately as long as we've known each other. And in management and science, and apply it to anything, there's a finite amount of knowledge or information about any subject or field. You know, and all of us can know it. Some of us know it inherently. Some of us have to work at it. The knowledge is out there and can be learned. What separates anybody from anybody is your ability to communicate it, to teach it, to articulate it, to inspire, to get somebody to connect with it. All these different human emotions that take information or knowledge, and we can humanize it to do real things with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's rare to find somebody who, number one, is as intelligent as Karl, because there's a lot of smart people out there, but they're socially awkward. There's a lot of people out there who are well-spoken, but they're not very smart. You know, they don't have a lot of common sense, and they're not very intelligent. It's rare to find somebody who is as intelligent as Karl about, you know, a number of different things, obviously, but just talking about, you know, our subject matter in this episode, to be as intelligent and well-versed about a subject and be able to communicate it as clearly and eloquently as he did, and to do it to, you know, at the level that he did. Because I asked him about the question about my grouse back home and being stressed in the winter going into spring, and, you know, is there a correlation between being stressed and breeding activity? That's not a common question to be asked off on the spot. You know what I mean? And then I expect him to be like, yeah, they're stressed, this, that. And he pulled out the adrenal gland and the gonadal gland, or what, I was like, what? And not just did he pull it out, like he communicated it clearly. And something as specific as that, not only did he communicate it clearly, he communicated it in a way that I could understand. Not like a biology textbook or whatever. So it was, I don't know. RGS, they got a very, very good one, and Karl Malcolm.
Yeah. Like, like everything that you said, right? I like I said at the end, I'm a very excitable person, and I get caught up in a moment, as you know, and it's one of my flaws. And it's not a horrible flaw, but it's still a flaw that I try to work on. But and what I did think about what I said throughout the podcast is that someone that really affected my life in a professional manner was hands down was Dr. Craig Harper. And I mean, because I was all fixated on this and that and food plots, blah, 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 when I was doing deer consulting. And then I listened to him talk, and it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, he took it to another level, and it made me think and made me strive to be better and look at things differently and build a relationship with Craig. I haven't talked to him in forever. Probably won't even remember me, but at the same time, I mean, he was just everything. And I was listening to Karl talk, and I like, granted, it was only an hour or so, but just he reminded me so much of someone that could affect me in a positive manner, like Harper. And I to say that I don't say it prematurely. Like I told him on the thing, I could, he probably won't disappoint me. I'll probably disappoint you, but it's he was that impressive. And I've been like, I'm 52 years old, and I've been managing wildlife for 30 years, and to have somebody, when and it's like, man, this guy is good. Mm-hmm. And he, like I said, he didn't make you feel stupid by asking silly, questions and stuff like that. It was just the way he communicated, like you said, no ums and all that stuff. You appreciated his knowledge. Mm-hmm. And it was like, we didn't even, we how you get a beer or a pop and and it doesn't open all the way. It's like, mm-hmm. Oh, that's what we did. It's like, we didn't even open it. We didn't even open it, Yeah. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, we need to continue talking to you and learn from you. And that's the best part about it. I can't emphasize enough. Like Cody and I, like, our knowledge of Ruffed Grouse and the management is there. And we do not pretend to be someone that we're not, because that's not what we are. But with that being said, we're along for the ride with you, right? Cody, I mean, we're learning and bouncing stuff off each other and excited, and to have access to someone like Karl and others, like even Tim, it's exciting. It's very exciting.
I agree with most of that, except for the point where I pitched the idea of the grouse being stressed, and that's why he wasn't drumming as much. You and I talked about that a lot last spring, because we were dumb, like, they're there, but why aren't they drumming? And then the chicks were like, where did they come from? So we hypothesized, but Karl, being the biologist,
yes,
in confirming my theory, I am going to take it as an honorary biology degree. So, for those listening, this is Cody Altizer, PhD. Stand by.
And maybe, you know what? 94%. You got 94% on your test, too.
Grouse biology.
You did. Grouse biologist. Thank you.
So I'm basically a biologist now. So
I was going to say to Karl, but I didn't get the chance. Like, if I told Cody once, I told him 1,000 times, almost word for word, about what he was experiencing. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. It's just, as much as you think you'd like to think, there's some people out there that just humble the hell out of you, and it's frustrating. It's
we talked about it in the last episode, our favorite communicators or communication traits. Karl, he checked those boxes for me. I hung on to every word. Not to sound too, I was the heart eyes emoji. I was like, dude, tell me more about
Did we
grouse.
just become best friends?
Yeah. Tell me more about grouse. Tell me more about passenger pigeons. Tell me all the things, dude. Lead me into battle.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. That's what it takes to move this needle. It takes people like him and some leadership, and we can make a difference. We can. Don't think that we ever can't. because it is possible. We've done it with so many species throughout our history of the conservation story. Yeah, it's just like we can. Antelope, grouse, or geese, deer, turkey. We've done it. We've done it before. It just takes people like Karl. It takes people. It takes an army. It's just not a one person thing. You take someone like Karl and you learn from it, and that way you can go on and pass that on. It's little militias, and we can make a difference. Don't ever think this ruffed grouse thing is impossible, because you know what? As much as it does seem like, oh, this bird's done. No, it's not. It's not done. No, it's just know that it is not done. We can make a difference, and not to repeat myself, it is the future. Man, real quick, and I'll wrap this up. Every time I think it's a useless, like this is crazy, and the future, the people, like we need better people, better communicators. We are meeting them. That's exciting. It's like we haven't met anybody that's like, oh boy, like they're out there. We just don't know who they are, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the future's good. You got to be positive. But anyway, I'm rambling.
No, I got nothing else other than we've been really fortunate. I don't think it's anything that I say it's nothing that we've done, because I don't think that it is, but I think it is something that we've done because we're the platform that a lot of like-minded people are using. We're creating the platform for your Karl Malcolms and your Ethan Tappers and your Tim Flanagans and your Noah Smiths and your Wes Hodges to stand on our platform and communicate what they know, share what they've learned, tell their stories, educate on hunting or forestry or biology of the species or whatever the case may be. So I was thinking with Karl, we've to follow up an Ethan Tapper. We had to follow Ethan Tapper up with me and you, but our next guest after Ethan Tapper to have Karl Malcolm. Like, dude, we've had some great people, and
we have.
It's all what have made great episodes have been great guests, but they've agreed to come on to our podcast and use our platform because I think, to a degree, I hope they align with what you and I represent. So we'll just keep, like I said, the river cuts through rock, not by force, but through persistence.
Yeah. So amen to that.
Keep on
keeping on. Well, with that being said,
I'm going to hang up my degree. Where did I get this from? Florida? UF has a good wildlife program.
Yes. Yeah. You can put it next to your little burning.
UF.
Your little burning thing. Yeah, hey. See, that's the thing. At UF, they just hand these things out like it's not a big deal. It's just whatever, man. It's willy-nilly. You don't even have to earn a degree. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You put it right next to that little diploma behind you. Yeah, isn't that your burning thing behind you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see? 94%. See, you didn't put the percentage that you got on the test on there. Maybe it was a 93 this time.
No. God, I hope I don't have to take it again. Can you imagine? What if I failed
it? Anyway, well, with that being said, appreciate everybody. Appreciate you, Cody. Thanks for all the hard work you do with all this stuff. And remember to buy shirts. Remember to 5-star the podcast. Get some stickers. Donate to the Give for Grouse billboard. Other than that, as my grandpa always used to say, no hurry, no worry, keep moving.